Hi, everyone. Welcome to our call today. I'm so thrilled to be able to introduce to you a gentleman that I had the pleasure of meeting about a year ago. And in meeting him, he had such an impact on me. I just immediately felt such a respect for his authority in terms of financial management, which is his background, but also his experience with this industry. And it was nice that we could communicate on the same level of those kind of experiences of familiarity with the corporate financial aspects and the business financial aspects too. So I'm going to read his bio just because I want to be sure that I recognize and acknowledge everything about his background for you. So first of all, he is the author of a book that I am a big fan of too. It's called The Ripple Marketing. So please be sure to look for Ripple Marketing, and we'll put a link of that in our show notes as well. David Skultety has been in the network marketing profession for over 20 years. Through companies he has represented, he has mentored thousands of people to take control of their financial futures and guided them to become lifestyle entrepreneurs. For the first 4 years of his career, David failed miserably, in his words. In 1999, he became a distributor for a health and wellness company and built an organization of over 300,000 people who produced over $500 million in wholesale sales. He then accomplished what very few have done. He started a new business from scratch, built an entirely new organization up to 100,000 people all over again. Many who know David consider him to be a networker's networker. His reputation for keeping it real and genuine and serving others has earned him the respect of many throughout the profession. And indeed, that's how I met David, was through someone that had such respect for him and thought the two of us should get to know each other. Outside of business, he's a devoted and grateful father to three amazing teenagers, young adults, and he enjoys playing golf, going to concerts, traveling, and chilling out with friends. His life philosophy is centered on the 5 F's: faith, family, friends, freedom, and fun. To learn more about David or to contact him directly, we'll put a link in our show notes. So, David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure, Laura. Appreciate you having me.
So tell us just a little bit about how you were introduced to network marketing.
Okay, well, I'd love to. I have a traditional background, like many. I come from a classic middle class family. Parents that wanted something better for their children than they had for themselves. I think so. I'm very blessed. My parents put me through college, and they worked really hard to do so. So I graduated. I had the fortuitous timing of graduating in 1990. And you may remember there was a recession back then, but my dreams and aspiration coming out of college was to go to Wall Street and be an investment banker. But there were no jobs. There were no jobs in 1990. As a matter of fact, all the analyst programs that were part of the investment banking space just locked up at that point in time. So I just did what I knew. I've been an entrepreneur all my life and went out and started a business on the Jersey Shore. And during that process, came across a couple people that, with hindsight, they were in the network marketing space, but I didn't give them any time. Honestly, I was just focused on what I was doing and my advertising concept. But then a couple years passed. I ended up selling that business. The economy improved, and got that Wall Street job I was looking for. And it wasn't, but maybe 10 months into that job, that a friend of my father's from his country club reached out to me talking about an opportunity with deregulation at the time. That's what it was. And so I guess I was relatively open. I went down that back then. You used to go down to hotels to actually see the presentation, and went down. And honestly, Laura, I saw the circles get drawn and the geometric progression going on. My head started to spin a little bit, and they were talking about this residual income, something that I couldn't relate to at that point in my life. And I just dove in. I was like, wow, this is something I would love to do. So that's how, in short, that's how I got introduced.
So I love that story. So what have you learned about the differences between working as an employee and building this kind of business?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, it's an interesting question. I probably teach people that more than I live it, because I've really never been an employee. I've been really pretty much self-employed all my life. even going back to the late 70s, where you may remember the oil embargo. I mean, I'm sitting here like as a fifth grader looking at cars line up for a mile and a half long to get gas, and depending on their license plate number. And a friend and I, we just went and got a cart and filled it with coffee and lemonade and walked right up and down. And so at a very young age, I was putting $20 a day in my pocket, when at that time, I think the minimum wage was about $2.35. So we were working a full day's wage within about an hour and a half of walking down a road in a line. So, but I really always respected the employee mindset, I guess. But I guess to really answer your question, Janine, it really all starts with mindset, and there's nothing wrong with people being an employee, but being an entrepreneur is a completely different dynamic. I think the employee mindset is what I would call somewhat fixed. I mean, they know what they know. They're set, and people are set in their ways. They wake up on Monday. They go to work. They put in their time. They get paid, and then when they're done working, it's their time. And maybe they do it Monday through Friday and have weekends off in a traditional sense. But from an entrepreneurial perspective, I don't think anybody can really be successful without having a growth mindset, meaning they need to expand their horizons. They need to recognize that change may be in order. And they got to be outside the box thinker. So I think the first thing I would say is the mindset piece is the biggest difference, up front and center. Secondly, and I kind of alluded to it, most employees, have a schedule. They have a schedule they adhere to. They have responsibilities, but they have a schedule, and they have their off work schedule. I think with entrepreneurship, the schedule needs to be flexible, because there's some significant sacrifice that has to happen in order to succeed, as an entrepreneur. So having that flexibility or that sacrifice that's really needed is really important. I also think that, it's interesting, like most quote unquote employees, I think in the short term. Maybe they're thinking long term, I don't know, but I mean, mostly short term. Whereas to be a successful entrepreneur, I think people need to think, they need to play the long game. They need to begin with the end in mind, know where they're going, and realize that there's going to be trials and tribulations. There's going to be challenges along the way. And so you have to be a really good problem solver. The other thing I realized within, the space that we're in, the direct sales network marketing space, is that, we're working with a volunteer army. These are people that have made a decision to maybe take control of their own destiny, maybe to go out and earn additional income stream, but we're not anybody's boss. Whereas in the employee space, there's a similar hierarchy, but people are kind of bossing people around, giving directives. And whereas in this space, it's not so much directives as it is kind of empowerment. And so, there are a couple of things. I think also the expectations are probably different. I think employees, their expectations are to go and, they work a job, they have their duties, and maybe if they do it well, they expect a raise of some sort at the end of the year. I think whereas entrepreneurs, their expectations, at least the good ones, should be that there is no glass ceiling. There's no ceiling to what can be achieved. And again, I think that all ties into the mindset piece of things. But there is a difference. But I love, quite candidly, it's a great question, because I love helping people make that shift. And sometimes it's easier said than done.
Yes, it is a difference. I love how you articulated there the contrast between the two. So is there something that you wish you would have known when you got started in this industry? What would that be?
So for the first 4 years, I got involved. I was passionately involved, but at the end of 4 years, I think my, quote unquote residual income was less than $100. And so when I went from a profession where I was doing well, making six figures, and you spend all this time with this quote unquote business endeavor and you don't get results, something had to give. And so what I realized at the end of those 4 years, that it wasn't the company I was representing, quite candidly, because here we are 25, 2.5 decades later, they're very successful company. It was me. Like I wasn't following the system. So I think if I were to reboot, and there's a lot of things I would do different, but number one, I would check my ego at the door. Like I didn't have like a massive ego, but I had this kind of control mechanism probably where, it's like, oh, I can do this. I don't need to use that tool. I can create this better tool. Okay. Or I don't need to go take somebody to that particular presentation. I can do the presentation myself. Whereas the truth is that didn't duplicate. Okay. There was no duplication in that, which brings me to the second thing I wish I understood was that this business can't be people dependent. It has to be system dependent. And so what I was doing was recreating the wheel that was already spinning great. It just seemed like, to me, it seemed overly simplistic. But again, with hindsight, that was the brilliance of it. It was hit with a simple stick for a reason. So being system dependent versus people dependent. And I think the third thing that I would mention, Laura, is that the art of listening. Like I think God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And what I've learned over the years is that this is a people business. And in order to effectively, move people, you need to listen first and understand where they're at, meet them where they're at. And that's just something, again, it took time to figure out. I think you guys have probably both read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I think it's something everybody should read once every couple of years to understand the art of communication, the art of listening, the art of really seeing where people are, and then providing a solution for them. So I could probably go on and on with that, but that's clearly, probably the top 3.
I love what you're talking about. Oh my gosh, I feel like there's so many differences in this profession and anything else. And you do have to check your ego at the door, even if you think you didn't have an ego. I remember when I first got into the business, people would say, don't do what works, do what duplicates. And I thought that was just the craziest thing I'd ever heard. Like, why wouldn't you do what works? But you do want to use the power of leverage in this business. So what advice would you give to somebody that is looking at this business? And then maybe also talk about what advice you would give to someone about selecting a company.
Okay, I could do that. That's great. So let's talk about the advice to give to newbie, because I do this every single day. Like it's really kind of easy. It's just like right off the top of my head. So the first piece of advice is, again, once you listen to where they're at and understand what they're trying to achieve, and you understand the journey they're on, you have to help them make a decision. Now, they have to make a decision for themselves, but it's been my experience that nobody succeeds in this business until they make a decision, until they cross the line that they're going to go out and they're going to build a business. They're going to make the sacrifices and they're going to do what's necessary. That's number one. Number two, it's important that people don't make themselves the issue. Again, that was one of my failures. And so you don't want to make yourself the issue, because otherwise all the lights on you. And if you want it, if it's all about you, then it's not going to go that far. To your point, Janine, this is not going to duplicate. I think thirdly, I've seen people come into, and here's what happens. People come into this business, and a lot of people come in and they don't even know what they're getting involved in. Sometimes it's really kind of interesting, especially in the year 2020, more and more people are entering the network marketing space for the first time. And they may have preconceived notions. They may know what it's about. They may not. But when at the end of the day, if they really want to build a business, they can't just start it. They have to launch it. like if you've made a decision that this is a vehicle you're going to use for yourself, to better yourself, to better your family, to build a legacy, whatever your objectives really are, you need to launch it. And that takes commitment. That takes clarity. It takes full-on massive action. You got to be coachable in this thing and just follow the people that are leading you. Hopefully whatever you join or the people you join, have that type of system, but you have to launch it. Okay. I would also say that, so many people get involved in network marketing and they don't treat it like the multi-million-dollar opportunity it is. You have to treat it like a business. And that really starts with understanding A, what business is, and B, you've got to be organized. I can't tell you, 9 out of 10 people, when we go through a training and you talk about the basics of creating a list of people to contact, they literally don't write it down. They don't get organized on it. And so whether it's that aspect of it, or realizing the tax deductibility, of things. I mean, you really got to treat it like a business, because if you treat it like a business, if you have that business mindset, you're going to be much more successful as you reach out to people, because you do need to articulate what this model is all about. I think another thing would be maybe about purpose. This is something I've learned over the last couple of years specifically, is that it's one thing to go out there and prospect, right? It's one thing to go out there and share your product or service. It's another thing to go out there and share the business model. But if you do it with because you're going to make money at it, that, to me, from my perspective, isn't the way to think. Whereas conversely, if you go out there and do it because you're purpose driven with what you're doing, people tend to get attracted to that. People love purpose. They love to be involved in a mission of some sort. So if you have that kind of why, that we always talk about, and you package it up right, and you kind of tie it into your purpose, I think it's a lot easier. Honestly, I think it's a lot easier. I also think that today more than ever, people had this conversation about a half an hour ago with somebody where they were like, well, I'm going to go talk to this person and that person. I think it'll be perfect for this person. Look, the truth of the matter is, who are we to judge? Like, you can't prejudge anybody in this thing, because those who you think would have an interest won't, and vice versa. And I think now more than ever, what I said to this young lady earlier today, I said, look, everybody will get up there, and nobody's afraid to get up on the soapbox and say they have their, quarantine 20 on, they want to lose weight, or they want to get in better shape, or whatever it may be. They'll wave that flag, but people aren't too quick to get up on the rooftop and wave their financial issues. The consumer debt that's kind of dragging them down, the fact that they are struggling, they got over leveraged or whatever it may be. People aren't really that forthright on that. So just because that person is driving a German car and they're in that nice house, don't assume that they're not having challenges, And so I don't think you can judge. I think, gosh, what other advice would I give? I mean, I think having the right mentor is important. It's kind of like the person who wrote the foreword to my book used the analogy of a Sherpa. Like, if you're going to go to climb Mount Everest, I don't think you'd go with your buddy and say, okay, you go first. like you lead the way. I think you're going to want somebody who's been to the top already and knows the ins and outs, knows the risks and the way to get there. So I think it's important to have that. And I think the last thing I would say would be, this business will grow as much as you grow. There are some sayings, some people say this is like, a personal development program with a compensation plan wrapped around it. I mean, I'm not sure if I haven't really used that often, but I do believe that we constantly have to work on ourselves, because that thing between our ears can play tricks on us. It does to me all the time. Honestly, you wake up some days and it's like, like, I don't know, what am I doing? Like, do I really want to do this? But again, how we tap in, whatever we may do, whether it's, affirmations, or we do the daily meditation or the affirmations, or we going out there and, working out or whatever it may be, but we got to grow as individuals, because if we're just hanging out, and it's really dependent upon who we're hanging out with, right? But if we hang out with really awesome people, awesome things tend to happen. And so I think that's an important piece. And then, look, if you don't believe in what you're doing, why you're doing it, then I'm not sure what the point is. So I don't know, that was kind of a long-winded answer to your question, Janine, but that would, if somebody asked me that question right off the street, that's probably the points I would make.
I love it. And how about company? Do you want to talk about that as well?
Yeah, that's it. That's an interesting dynamic, because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of companies out there. And the truth of the matter is, gosh, like 4 out of 5 don't make it past 2 or 3 years, right? I mean, it's unfortunate, but because there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that have good intentions, know this is a very powerful model. But in many respects, they're undercapitalized. They don't have the right people, the right experience, so on and so forth. So when I evaluate companies, whether it's for myself or more likely not for other people who call me looking for an opportunity and looking, seeking objective advice, you have to start at the top. Who owns the company? What is their track record? Where's their level of integrity? Is the company funded properly? Which is a very hard thing to do, mind you, because most companies are privately held and you don't have access to, the balance sheets and stuff. But I think you need financial stability. But I think independent of that, the person should have experience, lots of integrity. I think the second thing one should look at is the leadership. And that leadership, again, is the ownership, maybe the corporate executives, but it's also the leadership within the field, because they play just as an important, if not more important role. And along with that leadership, along with those owners, comes the culture in the community. And I got to tell you, that having been somebody who's played a significant part in creating the culture of two particular companies, I can't tell you how important that is. I mean, I think I'm preaching to the choir. You ladies know that, but it's super important, because if you fall into the wrong culture or the wrong community and it doesn't feel well, you're really handicapping yourself, because likes attract likes. And so if it doesn't resonate with you, chances are it's not going to resonate with other people that you're affiliated with. I think the third thing that I would look at is, and these are in no particular, well, the first two are definitely 1 and 2. I think the third thing one we would look at would probably be the systems and support. I've always looked at the network marketing space as the franchise without the franchise tag, meaning, this is a model where if you go into a company that has systems that will allow you, regardless of your education, regardless of your background, regardless of your entrepreneurial energy or lack of, for that matter, that you can do this, and it will duplicate, that's a really strong thing. So you need the proper systems, you need the proper support, for the masses as they come in. It's obviously important to look at the products. I mean, they got to be, in my mind anyhow, they should be consumable. They need to be high quality. And honestly, I think they need to be able to sell themselves. In other words, if the company should have a product line that people would purchase the products, even if they weren't getting compensated for it. If that makes sense. I mean, they would promote it, they would share it with people, even if they weren't getting compensated. And so when you find yourself in that space, that's a big check mark for me. I think again, some of these things are more difficult for the average person, but I think you want to see operational efficiency. If I was looking at a company, I would be calling their customer service. I'd be interacting with their customer service. I would be seeing how things are delivered, how they're packaged. That's a really important piece, especially today, where we're dealing with an environment where the expectations are very high. We're in an Amazonian world, right? People expect like free delivery tomorrow. You know what I mean? So operational efficiency is a big piece. And then I think the last thing I would mention, and again, I'm leaving out compensation on purpose, because look, not all compensation plans are created equal, and they all create a particular behavior. But I don't think one should ever join a company just because of a quote unquote compensation plan. Because if you drive enough volume through it, they will work. I mean, there are better ones than others. I get that, but they will work. But the last thing I would mention would be, is there vision? Like, can you see beyond next month, next year? Like, where is this company going? Do the owners, the principals, I mean, are they looking to build a legacy business? Because at the end of the day, we're independent contractors, we're independent distributors. We really don't have much say. And if you're going to build a business where you can truly build a residual income and walk away from it and maybe give it to your kids or something, like, you want to be partnered, I think, with somebody who just sees way beyond, the horizon as it pertains to what their goals are and what they're looking to do.
Yes. I love that, David. And I love that, as you were talking about what to look for in a company, I like that we all give grace and encouragement to people that the company you might be with may not be the right fit for you, or you may have grown in a different direction, or the company may have grown in a different direction. And that is absolutely okay. You have permission to make a different decision. For those of you that are out there listening to this call, it's okay to make a different decision. And it is possible to be successful, to leave a company that you've been with for a while and get involved with a new one. And having that criteria, I think for many people, if they would have had that to begin with, they might have made a better choice. And I think, any of us could say that possibly. But it's good to know that it's okay to do that. It's okay to you learn and you use that criteria and you make a different choice, right?
I think you're absolutely right, Laura. I think, look, I mean, if you don't go out there and make mistakes out there in life, you're never going to learn. Right. I think the difference between people who make mistakes and learn from them and move on versus the ones who make a mistake and fall down and can't get up and brush themselves off, that's the difference between winning and losing, in my opinion.
Yes.
So I think, again, I don't really judge. I come across that, as I'm sure you do, all the time. People will say, "Oh, I've tried that," which is always a fascinating comment to kind of address.
Yeah.
But look, trying isn't the answer. It's committing to something, and it's okay to acknowledge that you may not have won at the level that you expected, but it may not have been your fault either. And so, again, to your point, finding the right vehicle, the right company, and the right people to work with is a really important part of it.
Yeah. I love the credibility that your background and your knowledge from a financial advisory perspective um, it brings to this discussion. Because I want to say this, that I feel sometimes people that are not involved in network marketing make some assumptions about those who are involved in network marketing. And I like it when we are able to spotlight folks such as you that people. I hope that folks are able to see and to say, "Wow, well, if someone who knows as much about economics and financial planning." And entrepreneurship as David chooses this industry and feels that this is a good fit for him and a good way to leverage time and money, then maybe I should, or maybe it's okay if my daughter does, or someone else that I know does as well. So I want to thank you for bringing that element to this, and that's refreshing and credible as well. And we want to have a closing question, really, of just what do you think is the most important factor, since I was talking about finances a little bit. What do you think is the most important factor for someone being able to achieve financial success in their network marketing business? What have you seen that be?
Wow. Can I give you like a two-part answer to that?
Yes.
I mean, because I'm not sure if there's just one. There actually, in my mind, is just one. But you just, in that segue there, you spoke about the financial aspect of things. The biggest challenge from my perspective about society and the financial well-being or the financial health of, just to say, the 330 million people here in the United States, is they don't have the right money mindset. And what I always teach people is the mindset you have is not your fault. Okay, we're all a product of our environment, whether it be our parents or whomever raised us. The way they brought us up, what they said to us when we were in the store and we asked for something, did they say, "Okay, great, grab it, put it on the cart," or did they say, "We can't afford that"? Either way, with repetition, it's going to be ingrained in you. Okay, so if you were not brought up understanding the value of a dollar, okay, and what it really takes to earn it, and what it is to not only earn it, but then ultimately save it. And then ultimately, once you've saved enough to think forward thinking for the future and actually learn the concept of investing, that's a really important piece. And so most people who are having financial troubles, it's because of their money mindset. And so I think it's a really big thing. You talked about, we talked about earlier about books. I mean, if I were to write any other book, it would be centered around that, because in my journey within the network marketing profession, that has been the number one thing that I think that would help people, I think, is getting that right mindset, getting out of debt, realizing there is a future, paying themselves first, all these things that would really help them become more successful as an entrepreneur in general, let alone in this profession. So I just want to say that. But to your question of what the most important factor is, in my mind, it's two words: servant leadership. Okay. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything, no matter what the organization. And I think serving other people, and again, this is something I had to learn. So I'm not saying, I'm not going to be a hypocrite here. Like, when I got involved in this industry, it was all about me. I said, look at this comp plan. How am I going to get paid when I go out and do this? Okay. But over time, as I realized it was a people business, it became very clear that you need to put other people first. Okay. And it's a very difficult thing to do because it takes time to do it. And most people in this industry are working on a part-time basis. So putting people other first is really important. I think number two, if you're going to succeed at being a leader, let alone a servant leader, you need to be who you want to ultimately attract. So it takes sacrifice from the perspective of like, going out there and really to spend the time with people, to get to know them, to help them, to guide them, to nurture them. That's a big piece of this thing. And then the third piece I would mention in servant leadership is it's all about empowerment. We just came off of a 4-day retreat down in Florida, first one we've done for the year. And one of the core focuses was helping people, first and foremost, define their fears, define the obstacles they had, but ultimately empower them to a level where they can overcome it. And so if you want to succeed financially, it's all about belief, right? You have to empower people to believe. It's one thing to talk about belief in your products. That's a no-brainer. It's another thing to talk about believing in the company that one's representing. Just go to an event, meet the people, and it tends to happen. It's another thing to believe in the network marketing space, which I think your podcast is helping people do. I love what you ladies are doing. And that sometimes takes time, maybe a deeper discussion. But at the end of the day, if you don't believe in yourself, it's all for naught. You have to help people believe in themselves, take the right action. And again, as I mentioned, focus on other people and helping people achieve what they're looking to do. And I think if you do that and you do it repetitively over time, that'll duplicate too. That mindset, that community, that cultural kind of thought, that will duplicate as well. And that's what I'm like, I don't want to say I'm on the tail end of my career, but let's just call it, we're out of the halftime tunnel, right? So it's like the second half here, that's where I'm really kind of focusing on, because I at least in my experience, I think that's where I'm getting the best bang for my buck.
Great
Well, I love
answer.
that. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And David, I just want to say again, thank you for your time today, and thank you for your candor and your wisdom, because you've had some experiences and definitely learned from them, and you're helping so many. So thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.